stupidest thing you've done to get the attention of someone you're attracted to? I'll start. Freshman year of college, we got placed in inbound orientation groups to do team building adventure activities, ostensibly so we would have some friends on the first day of school. Most of the activities were normal bike trips, some hiking, kayaking, etc. On the last day, we kayaked out to this island on the lake to go cliff jumping. Now, I'm terrified of water, but there was this super hot guy in my group, Kevin, who had taken a liking to me. I was only going off the 10-foot cliff, while Kevin and the other two boys went off the 40-footer. Kevin challenged me to be the only girl in the group to do the 40-foot cliff, and I did it. And landed wrong. And broke my tailbone hitting the water. And had to kayak home. TLDR, broke my tailbone trying to impress a guy. I put a $5 bill in her locker, with to a note with a secret AOL instant messenger screen name, Tornado 3021, or something like that, on a post-it. This was in 7th grade. I talked to her for a few months online almost every single night, and refused to tell her who I was, even though she continually asked. I finally told her at high school graduation, the last time I saw her, that I was Tornado. She didn't say a word. It remains one of the most awkward things I've done. When I was 17, this girl that I was madly in love with asked me to drive her to Buffalo, a city 400 miles away from my hometown, to visit a friend. We had just kissed for the first time the week before, and I was elated to spend a weekend away with her. So I lied to my parents, drove all the way up to Buffalo in the dead of winter, and when we arrived at her friend's house, another guy came out and gave her a hug and a kiss. Not knowing what to do, I said, "Give me a call when you're done." I drove off to the mall, watched the ice harvest, slept in my car, and picked her up the next morning. I drove for 8 hours not saying a word, and listened to her try to apologize. Even after 7 years, I am convinced that every subsequent woman I've been with will do that to me. Edit. I should also note that I later went to the same college as the other guy. I saw him at a party once, we got drunk, and agreed that she was a huge bitch. This is really horrible and stupid, but I'll tell the story. I used to be pretty good at Dance Revolution. I owned my own Cobalt Flux, still do, in fact, and knew all of the 9-foot songs cold, and could pass max 300. Our freshman year of college, they had a game night very early on. I guess it was to get the freshmen to mingle a little bit. Well, just my luck, among the arcade games, they brought in a DDR machine. I was totally shocked to see it when I walked into the student union. This ridiculously hot girl from one of my classes was dancing on it. Obviously she was doing a horrible job like most people do who don't play the game, but she was laughing and being adorable. Now, instead of being the smart kid and going back to my room to get sneakers, I decide it's a good idea to just play in my flip-flops. After getting off to a great start on Afronova, I decide to get fancy and start doing spins while on the pad, and promptly fell off of it. Everyone in the student union was watching. I was known as that DDR guy for the first 2 months of school. Was in the gym on the treadmill a while ago, and the only other person in there was this hot chick doing yoga or something on the floor mats. For some reason, I got it into my head that I could impress her by doing a cool move to get off the treadmill when I was finished. Like, plant my feet on the treadmill belt, and just kind of slide off the back. However, I didn't slow it down enough first, so when I planted my feet, my legs shot out from under me, I body slammed myself onto the treadmill belt, and was ejected gracelessly off the back. I picked myself up as quickly as I could, but there was really no way to play that off like I had intended it. She didn't say anything, but her derision was palpable from across the room. I left quietly. Okay, so in high school I had a crush on this girl for like 2 years. We both wound up in the musical together, and I was cripplingly awkward in person. Now, the director emails all of us the same letters, weekly, so oh god I can barely type this. Okay, so, I found her email address, and I was gonna send her an email, but realized that looked creepy. So instead I did something 20 times creepier. I created a fake email account of a bisexual girl, and sent her emails that implied she had a thing for both of us. Then, I started talking to her in person and asked her if she's been getting any strange messages. She said yeah, and we started talking about it, and out of her pure unadulterated fear of this psycho lesbo stalker, she latched onto me like a friend. Just friends. That didn't go at all according to plan, but could have been worse. Then, I realized I had to make a wild card move if I wanted anything to happen. So, I told her everything. And yet, she wasn't the least bit weirded out. And we've been best friends for 4 years now, and dating for almost half of it. TLDR, I'm ducking creepy and my now girlfriend loves it. I went off a suggestion from a good friend of mine for this one. There was a pretty girl who usually had lunch at my dorm's cafeteria around the same time I did. So one day, before I went to lunch, I stashed a pineapple in my backpack. I ate my lunch as usual. She came in as usual. When I was done eating, I took the pineapple out, walked up to her table, and asked her, "Do you need a pineapple?" When she started to produce a confused rendition of the word "no," I cut her off and said, "Everyone needs a pineapple." I planted the pineapple on the table in front of her and confidently walked away. We never spoke again. I burned her a mixed CD of love songs. Her friend asked me if I liked her, and I panicked. Trying to play it cool, I was like, nah, that's just the music I like to listen to. She ended up dating my friend instead. Also, to this day she thinks I'm closeted. Nailed it. When I was a teenager, I decided I was going to impress a girl who was a huge fan of the WWE, then WWF, at the time. I grabbed a metal folding chair and proceeded to hit myself in the face with it multiple times while flopping on my back, as if I were mankind in an actual Hell in a Cell match. At first she was quite amused, but soon her face turned to sheer terror. The massive beating I decided to give myself had caused my head to split wide open, which allowed for quite a show all in itself. I went straight to the hospital and received over a dozen stitches, all in the name of young love. That was the day I learned that professional wrestlers use a different type of folding chair when performing in the ring. The more you know. TLDR, repeatedly bashed myself in the face with a metal folding chair until my head split open. In junior high I gave this girl I fancied a necklace from one of those 25-cent machines at the store. The necklace said love on it. I felt really dumb about this for nearly 10 years. About a year ago, I went and visited her, and to my surprise, I found it on a wall full of memorabilia from her life. I find it quite touching that she held onto it, even if she only kept it as a funny token. Me and my two best buds really wanted to touch this hot 6th grader's ass while we were at 5th grade camp. She was playing foursquare, and Austin ran up and placed a basketball right behind her legs, jumped on the ball, tripped and ate shit. But, while he was falling to the ground, he got a huge handful of 6th grade booty. So she turns around, sees Austin on the ground all scraped up, and helps him to his feet all while asking him if he was alright, then gave him a hug. Knew a guy who went to a bowling party with a girl he had his eye on. Realized he could stick his thumb in a bowling ball and hold it using just his thumb. Thinking this would impress the girl, he held it over her head and said, "Look." Girl looks up, ball falls, breaks girl's nose, blood everywhere. That sounds like the worst idea ever. In high school I was deeply in love with a girl who knew me only as the creepy guy who stared at her in chorus. I think my most pathetic attempt to garner her affection is a toss-up between that time I made a song on a digital music program for her, and gave her a CD of it, or the time we were in one of the school musicals together and I sent her a plastic rose. They were selling them to support the show, with a note on it signed love, my name. I cringe every time I think about high school. To this day she jokes about you with her friends. I was riding across a bridge, and saw this hot guy taking his shirt off along the edge of the lock on the other side, so I decided to ride by to get a closer look and say hi. As I turned my bike from the bridge and onto the path, I turned too far and fell a couple of stories into the water. I entered the water through a 4-foot gap between two boats. I don't know where the guy went, but he certainly didn't save me. In high school, about 1,500 students, we had a homecoming pep rally in our gym where we had a basketball game called Bump Out. The winner won 2 tickets to the homecoming dance. Needless to say, I came out victorious, and as the entire school was cheering for some unknown reason, because I was shy and unpopular, I ran up to the guy hosting the rally, took the mic out of his hands and said, "Holly name, will you be my date to the dance?" The gym went silent, and all of a sudden a yes came out of the crowd. Fast forward 8 years. She's now my wife and the mother of my 2-year-old son. I understand I'm going to get down votes for not sticking to the title, but it was the coolest thing I've ever done in any aspect of my life. When I was 16, I was hanging out with a cute girl who I really liked. We'd been hanging out for about a month or 2. At her house one night, I decided to do some impressing and announced that I would cook her and her mom dinner. I decided to make a surprise dessert of chocolate chip cookies with it and put them in the oven right as we were sitting down to eat, so they'd be ready once we finished eating. It went great. My mom had taught me well, and the dinner was delicious. Afterwards, she and I were upstairs snogging in our underpants for a while. All of a sudden, her mom comes upstairs yelling, "Fire! We've got to get out, there's a fire." We jump out of bed and ran outside, still in our underpants, as the volunteer fire truck shows up. Turns out it was just a smoke scare. I hadn't set a timer because the cookies were going to be a surprise and ended up forgetting about them. We ended up being together for the next 2 years. There was a girl that I liked in summer school back in grade school. I talked to her older brother and borrowed the game Keymaker and got his number just in case something happened. Later on I called their house, and when she picked up I said, "I like you," and hung up. The awkward is strong in this one. When I was 13 years old, there was a gorgeous girl that had moved in across the street. Dark hair, dark eyes, and those great designer jeans that all the girls were wearing back then. She was 16, hot in that 80s hood rat style that promised more than it ever gave, and way too cool for me. So, me and my somehow finagle a case of beer from one of our houses, take it over to her house, and start drinking. The most I had ever drank before that was maybe 2 beers in a row that we stole from his dad's fridge. So 6 beers in, I am way far gone. My little 13-year-old body was crushed by the alcohol, but I was going to impress this girl no matter what. She whips out a cigarette and asks if I smoke. I blurt out, "Of course I do," and light one up. I take a few puffs and realize I am in too deep. I'm feeling all green and pukey, but I need to get out of this situation without looking like a wuss. So, I say, "Hey, you ever see someone put out a cigarette in the palm of their hand?" Her reply with an evil hood rat grin, "No, let's see it." So, I take a dag to get the embers nice and red, then jam it into my palm. I ran screaming like my 3-year-old daughter back to my house and shoved it in the toilet bowl to cool it down. That's when the puking started. My aim was so bad I had to switch to puking in the bathtub's general direction. My mom came home in the middle of this and consoled me the rest of the night by saying, "Isn't drinking great?" It was my very first horrible night with alcohol, and I could never be around that girl without a snicker or 5 at my expense. TLDR, tried to impress girl by getting drunk and putting out a lit cigarette in my palm. Didn't work the way I planned. I called a girl's house who I had like in the 3rd grade. Very awkward. When she finally got on the phone, had to ask her parents for her. The whole conversation consisted of me, "Hey Sam," her, "Hi, me nervous as hell, see you in school tomorrow." Click.